Part 4. Islam in Europe and Knowledge Exchange. In a world where kingdoms rose and empires fell, there was a place where light broke through the dark. Across the Strait of Gibraltar, Islam stepped onto European soil. This was not just a march of armies, it was the birth of a civilization. Andalus. A land where faith met knowledge, where mosques stood with arches like open arms, where libraries overflowed with words from Greece, Persia, and India, where voices debated medicine, mathematics, and the stars. Picture Córdoba at its height, the streets alive with merchants, artisans, and music, Christians, Jews, and Muslims walking side by side, faith not dividing, but weaving people together. And within those walls, knowledge flowed, a Muslim mathematician shaping algebra, a Jewish philosopher translating Aristotle, a Christian physician guided by the ethics of the Quran. Ideas crossed languages, faiths, and hearts. They called Europe's past the Dark Ages, but here, Andalus was a beacon of light. Every scroll, every verse, every conversation was a bridge carrying wisdom across centuries. Yet it was not just about books, it was about lives, farmers working with fairness, merchants trading with honesty, families celebrating faith with joy. Islam was not separate from life, it was the rhythm of life. Even kings knew this rhythm. They built schools, supported translations, and guarded justice. Their legacy was not just power, but a society that thrived on balance. Of course, there were struggles, wars, rivalries, invasions. But even when kingdoms fell, the light of Andalus lived on. It traveled across Europe. It planted the seeds of the Renaissance. Imagine a young student in Córdoba, reading Aristotle in Arabic translation while the call to prayer rises in the distance. He learns philosophy, ethics, medicine, and carries that light further into the world. Because history is not only battles and borders. Sometimes the greatest victories are of the mind and the heart. Andalus showed the world that faith could inspire learning, that diversity could live with dignity, that civilizations flourish when justice and knowledge walk together. And so Islam in Europe was never just conquest. It was curiosity. It was coexistence. It was beauty and balance and brilliance. But the journey did not end there. For beyond knowledge and kingdoms lay another path, a path of poetry, of love, of the soul itself. And that is where we'll go next.
Part 5. The Mystics and the Human Heart. Long after deserts were crossed, oceans were sailed, and empires flourished, Islam continued its journey through a quieter path, the path of the human heart. This is the world of the Sufis. Mystics who did not march with armies, but walked with love. They carried no swords, no banners, only devotion and compassion. Imagine a lone traveler in Anatolia, a simple cloak on his back, a small bag of books by his side, verses of the Quran carried not on paper, but in memory, in the rhythm of his heart. He visits a village. He recites poetry under the stars. He teaches children by the glow of a lamp. No armies follow him, no trumpets announce his name, and yet his presence leaves an imprint deeper than any conquest could. Rumi, one of the greatest Sufi poets, spoke of love as the path to God. His words crossed borders, languages, and centuries. Through his poems, even those who never heard of Islam felt its essence: compassion, devotion, longing for the divine. In India, Sufi saints wandered into towns and forests. They healed the sick, they fed the hungry, they welcomed anyone who knocked at their door, rich or poor, believer or seeker. No sword could ever achieve what their kindness did. And in Africa, mystics walked across deserts and villages. They built small centers of learning and prayer. Through music, storytelling, and poetry, they carried faith to people who had never even seen a mosque. Consider a fisherman in Sumatra. Tired after a day's labor, he listens to a traveling mystic recite verses with a gentle voice. He repeats them at dawn. He whispers them at night. Slowly, those words shape his thoughts, his actions, his community. Faith spreads not loudly, but deeply. This is the power of human connection. When someone truly lives their belief with honesty, with compassion, people notice. They listen, they follow, and they carry the message forward. Across Anatolia, India, Africa, and Southeast Asia, the story was the same. Ordinary people became extraordinary messengers. Through teaching, healing, and loving, Islam spread quietly, universally. No internet, no social media, just hearts carrying light to other hearts. But Sufism was not only about spreading outward, it was also about looking inward. Every believer carried the journey inside through prayer, patience, charity, humility. Faith was not only in mosques or cities, it was alive in the soul. The beauty of Sufism lies in its universality. Rumi's words, Hafiz's verses, the teachings of saints across Africa and India all carried one truth: love for God, love for humanity, the search for inner peace. Picture a young girl in a remote village. She learns Quran by candlelight. A mystic sings verses softly. She repeats them, her voice trembling but steady. Her parents listen, her neighbors watch, and faith grows in her heart, spreading outward, quietly, invisibly. This is how Islam traveled oceans, deserts, and centuries. Not by force, but by example. Not by conquest, but by love. And so, as we look back, from Mecca to Medina, from deserts to cities, from scholars to mystics, one truth shines clear. Islam's spread was profoundly human. It relied not on empires, but on ordinary people making extraordinary choices, on compassion over cruelty, on honesty over deception, on love over fear. And today, when the call to prayer echoes in Indonesia, Morocco, or Istanbul, we are hearing the echoes of thousands of journeys, carried by scholars, travelers, merchants, mystics. Each prayer is a link in a chain that began with a man in a cave, a traveler at a port, a scholar in a city, and a mystic under the stars. And so, the journey comes full circle. Islam did not need the internet. It needed people. People who lived their faith sincerely, who taught by action, who inspired through love. And here we are, centuries later, witnessing the fruits of those journeys. Faith that spans continents, communities bound by devotion, knowledge, culture, and love intertwined across generations. So perhaps in our noisy modern world, we can remember this truth. The most powerful messages travel not through wires, but through hearts. Not through noise, but through sincerity. Not through force, but through love. And that is how Islam spread across the world. Not carried by technology, but carried by humanity itself.